that. It's kind of like in camera magic.
It's 7 o'clock. I think we should start. So.
All right.
It's 7 o'clock. I think we're streaming on the Ballard Institute Facebook Live channel. My name is John Bell, the director of the Ballard Institute and Museum of Puppetry at the University of Connecticut. And my colleagues, Emily Wicks, our manager of operations and collections, and our undergraduate student assistant, Tracy Becker, they're working backstage, as it were. And we're here tonight for Puppets and Little Shop of Horrors, a puppet forum event that we would have done live, but I mean in person at the Ballard Institute, but actually maybe we're reaching more people this way, with Marty Robinson, and also with Will Smith, graduate student from the Puppet Arts Program, and Robert Ian Cutler, also a graduate student from the Puppet Arts Program. Let me introduce everybody, but before that, I'll let you know about other events the Ballard Institute is doing online since the COVID-19 crisis has appeared. We're making all of our programming free and accessible online. And if you'd like to support this event and other workshops, forums, and performances, there's a workshop tomorrow at 2 p.m. You can contribute on a link that should be posted on the Facebook feed. Other events include a talkback for Nicotiana, which is a Balinese U.S. combination production with Crankies and Balinese-influenced Appalachian music on April 29th at 9 a.m. in Indonesia and at 8 p.m. in the United States. You can look at a video beforehand, check out the links on our Facebook page, so come to that. Our puppet building workshops, as I mentioned, are Wednesdays and Fridays at 2 p.m. on Facebook Live, at least through May 8. And keep an eye out for other events such as the Puppet Arts Program, final presentations, MFA presentations, talkbacks with performers, all of which should be announced online. What else? Okay, so we're really happy that Marty Robinson agreed to be with us. The Connecticut Repertory Theatre was planning at the University of Connecticut, was planning to do a production of Little Shop of Horrors with puppets designed and constructed by Will Smith, and with Rob Cutler acting as Will's assistant and also the dramaturg and the training coach for puppeteers. And then that didn't happen. We had already lined up Marty Robinson, who generously agreed to take part in this event. So we're really happy that we can present this to you here. Let me say a little bit about the participants. Marty has written, designed, and directed and performed for Broadway, film, and television for many years, as most of you probably know, including Little Shop of Horrors, The Muppets Take Manhattan, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, one of my favorites, Sesame Street, Allegra's Window, and more. He's performed on Sesame Street as Mr. Snuffleupagus, Telly Monster, Slimy, and other characters since 1981. He's also an international senior Muppet coordinator and teacher in various countries worldwide, which is a really interesting aspect of his work with Sesame Street. He recently wrote, designed, and directed the musical All Hallows Eve in New York City. I hope we'll see more of that production, and currently is performing as Mr. Prim in the Apple Plus production Helpsters. Will Smith is a second-year Puppet Arts MFA candidate. He received his BFA in the other American puppetry program in West Virginia University, and he designed and fabricated the puppets for Little Shop of Horrors. He's been a staff member at the National Puppetry Conference at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, a resident artist at West Virginia University, and has appeared as a puppeteer in many productions in his career, including Dr. Stein at Puppet Prometheus, Space Bus 9, a UConn Puppet Arts Project in Philadelphia, and Calle Allende with Anatar Marmol Gagne. Rob Cutler is a second-year Puppet Arts MFA candidate and came to UConn from Philadelphia with a background as an actor, carpenter, improviser, and puppeteer. And he was working or has been working as dramaturg for the Little Shop production at UConn, and has also performed in Space Bus 9, Puppets Here and There in Philadelphia, Welcome to Anhedonia, a Monkey Boys production, and Water Bears in Space. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob Cutler, who's going to lead us through some, I think, super exciting aspects of puppetry in Little Shop of Horrors. Rob.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate everyone making the time and joining us this evening. And special thanks to Mr. Robinson right here on Zoom. To kick it off, I just wanted to start with a little bit of history and look at what your initial involvement was and how that came to pass. So take us from the beginning of Little Shop. How were you approached and how did you get involved?
I was brought in with a lot of other puppet designer builders in New York. At the time I didn't know who else was coming in, but in the years since, you talk to people and said, yeah, I was up for that. Yeah, I tried that. I designed for that. So they threw a rather large net out there. I don't remember who. I had done a job with. At the Public Theater with, oh God, what's her name? Who designed Lion King?
Julie Taymor.
Julie Taymor, with Julie Taymor. And we had worked on a little film together and had a successful collaboration. So she recommended me, I'm pretty sure, to the group that was calling people in. So I got called in with everyone else. I came in, brought some of my favorite puppets. You know how you've got those puppets that you really worked very, very hard on. They never actually did anything, but they look really cool and they had a lot of bells and whistles, just purely to impress someone. So I brought those in and I met with Howard, and it was just Howard and I talking about Little Shop of Horrors, about our history with it when we were kids. It came out in 1960. I probably saw it in the mid 60s at some point, probably on Dr. Cadaverino's Nightmare Theater at 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, and I just loved it. And my brothers and I saw it, and I would always do the voice of the plant, feed me, shut up and feed me. So I drew little pictures of the plant when I was probably 7 or 8, and so I had kind of knew the project and kind of loved the project, the same as Howard. So we hit it off basically, and he liked the the stuff I brought in, and when he was showing me, he was running through what the show was, trying to give me the project in a nutshell. I had my sketchbook, and I was throwing some sketches out there, and I solved a couple of problems, a couple of challenges that he had with it right away, and I think that was I don't know if that cinched the deal or the fact that we got on so well, but it was the part where Seymour is the don't go to show you never know, the number 2 plant. We're gonna talk inside Audrey II jargon to a little bit. Apologies to everyone who hasn't grown up with this project their entire lives. But he wanted Seymour to sing this song and have the plant, and he was going to put it in separate places on the set. And he said, okay, well, he'll set it here in the window seat, and there'll be a puppeteer in there, and it'll work there. And then he'll pick it up, and puppeteer will go out, and then he'll put it on this piece of furniture. Well, there'll be another puppeteer in there. Anyway, so we had this planned out. And I said, well, why don't you just do the old fake hand routine, which luckily he had never heard about. It's an old, ancient old vaudeville thing. So I said, you got the fake hand, we'll take some care casting a proper hand. we'll get it, make a fake arm and, and do the ventriloquist bit. So the plant is able to move around, do the whole rumba thing, and not have the limitations of puppeteers in pieces of furniture. And he loved that idea. It solved a lot of dramatic issues. So what he said later was that was one of the things that he thought was a cool idea.
In working so closely from the start, were there other issues or challenges that were set forth at the beginning that you knew absolutely had to be included within the design of the puppet, outside of the Puppet 2? Anything specific?
The script was very specific, and what he wanted the plant to do was very specific, and I really wanted to see that through. He said later, also, he said that, yeah, well, when we would describe to people what he wanted the plant to do, he would say, well, I wanted to, it's got to start small, and it's got to grow, and it's got to be really appealing at the first, and then, and then grow into this horrible monster. It's got to talk jive. With the voice will probably be separate, and it's got to sing all these songs. And he said, kind of laid all this out. And he said that a lot of the people that he brought in said, "Oh, well, no, you can't do this and you can't do that. We can do this and you can change that." And and then they kept telling him everything that he couldn't do. He said, Howard said that what I said is, yeah, oh yeah, you can do that. Sure, yeah, absolutely, you can do all that. So of course, then I had to figure out how to do it, after shooting my so I just loved Howard right away. Loved the script, and and as I was playing with it and doing the designs, and I would play the music, which was on a cassette tape, and I would just with Howard and Alan doing all the demos for the songs. You can get that, actually. It's they've released that on a special album of Howard Ashman's. And I found out that I never got tired of the music, and that was a real strong tell after listening to it 100 times. Like, ooh, I still love this music. It's there's something to this, and I'm
so as you're starting out, sorry.
No, go ahead.
You've been you get the gig, and you have to back up what you said that you can do it. Did you consider other puppetry styles? Did you consider using shadow or marionette work or anything, or was it kind of conceived and immediately translated to the page?
I wanted a lot of control. Puppeteers are control freaks from the start. I wanted it to be, to have all the nuance that I knew that a direct control hand puppet could have. I sussed out right away that this was not a prop. This was not a set piece. This was not a gimmick. This was a living, breathing member of the cast, and who drove the action, who manipulated and then forced the actors into the storyline. That she was that she had to have all those great acting abilities. It had to be something that could really act well. And so I wanted all the nuance of a human body associated with it on a very close, intimate way. And for me, that was hand puppetry. Basically, all the original production was a hand puppet that got bigger, and that the puppeteer, me at the time, worked his body into more and more sections of the plant as it got bigger. There was a trick with the big one where I just moved my body further forward than you thought, and so I was just behind the center of balance, so I could still do all that heavy lifting that was required back then. And back then it was just heavy lifting. One of the things we did with the Broadway version is we did a lot of assist in the lifting. It was similar design, frankly, but there were lots of ways that didn't mean that me and my crew had to lift hundreds and hundreds of pounds for every syllable.
Well, on that note, in the original production, what was the weight that you were expected to lift repeatedly in sync with another actor from a night-to-night basis? How much did it roughly weigh?
In the original production?
Yeah.
Oh, that's one of the things about designing, building puppets, and then performing those same puppets, which is one of the things that that's what I really love doing, is the whole thing. And when you have to work the darn thing, you make it light. And when you know that you're the only one who's gonna be there fixing it night to night, you make it strong, you make it durable too. And that's always the trick, is how do you make it durable and light? So I made it just as durable and just as light as I possibly could. Those first plants were pretty darn light. I was what, 28, 29 at the time. I was just old enough with just enough know-how to be able to solve some simple things like that. When I did the Broadway production 20 odd years later, I was just young enough to still be able to get into that and whip it around. I actually turned 50 when we were in that production. So yeah, so some time has gone past. What was the question?
How much did it weigh?
Oh, how much did it weigh? A simple question. Requiring, I don't know, perhaps not all that complicated.
Okay,
answer.
this marathon's running all night. We've got
Lovely.
till 3 a.m.
Great. No, I could talk about this all day. Apologies to. It was probably, God, it's 40 to 60 pounds, and I'm talking about the big one. But as you know, as puppet designers, and anyone else is out there who's ever designed this thing or worked it, it's not the weight, it's the balance. It's where you are in a relationship to something. I mean, if I've got a pen here, if I'm holding it, right at the tip, right at the man, I gotta hold this thing tight. And my fingers are already getting tight, and it's and after 15 minutes, I'd be shaken. And it's a pen. Of course, you hold it here in the middle. You can hold it all day long. It's because it's balanced. So that's really the secret to working a big character is balance.
Sure.
When we did the big girl for the Broadway production, I mean, she was big and had lots of metal in her, but the puppeteer was right within the center of balance, and so you had all the mass but none of the weight.
Well, it's been great to look at our faces, but what do you say we look at some images from the past and talk about the initial fabrication? Not talking about the Broadway run, but talking about the early steps. Okay,
that's the poster from the original Corman production. It was they did that film because Roger Corman's brother called him up and said, "Hey, we got a set that's going to be torn down Monday. You can have it all weekend for nothing." So they had just finished production on Bucket of Blood, and the writer and the cast just stayed together and did a little shop of horrors. Just kind of tossed it off.
And you said you had seen the original film,
yeah,
as a kid.
As a kid, yeah. It's funny. It's funny that one of kind of a toss-off film of Corman's has become pretty much his one of his most famous films.
Yeah. Seeing what it was listed with as a double feature item was very interesting in my research. That's for another time. If we can move to the next slide, please, that'd be great. So what are we looking at here?
That is from a book of mine called Orchids, strangely enough. which when I was doing my my research on it, I said, okay, what do I want to pull from? And I started looking at orchids, and they are just so, they're just so out there. I mean, flowers are designed as, they're the, the sexual parts of the plants. They're designed to draw in the pollinators. And God, have you ever seen anything that would, draw you in more than orchids? They're just outrageous. The colors, the patterns, the shapes. Anyway, I just fell in love with the curves and the colors and the modeling, and this photo and other ones like it still excite me.
Yeah. I'm going to bring Will in real quick. Did you look at orchids on your process?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was just thinking to myself, if you look at my computer right now, like it's just filled with pictures of different kinds of flowers. And yeah, orchids were, especially that particular coloring. I swear I've seen a lot of pictures that look just like that one in my research.
Yeah, the green that models into the magenta that goes into the deeper. You can't see it on this photo, but but those deep, rich reds down at the center. That's a Paphiopedilum.
All right, that's your Latin lesson for the day, everyone. Let's move to the next slide. Who made these drawings, Marty?
I did.
Can you talk us through them a little bit?
That's me. That's a picture. It's based on a picture of me. The play became very popular. And we had 23 bona fide offers to upgrade it and move it when we were an off-Broadway showcase production. And when it started being a serious project, Howard came to me and said, people who want to produce this have to be able to make the plants. They've got to feel that they can make these plants and not let that get in the way of hundreds of thousands of people producing this play. So I produced the book, The How-To Audrey II, and this was the first step, which was kind of a simplified version of how I did it. It's not the only way to do it, but if you want to do it my way, this is the way I did it. And so I made this available, and the entire book of drawings and draftings, so that people could feel confident producing the play and making plants.
Now, obviously, you put this together after you had successfully completed the plants, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of trial and error, or did it go pretty straightforward based on your initial concepts?
Are you talking about when I originally built it?
Yes.
I didn't have time for a lot of failure, a lot of R&D. I only had a couple of months. And
what kind of budget were you working with in that kind of time?
I fronted the budget. It was $2,000 in materials at the time. We weren't getting paid. I think we made $360 for the entire original run.
I'm really surprised that you didn't go through a bunch of different renditions, because I went through a bunch of different ways to try to do it not the way you did it, and I always seem to fall back on the way you did it. So that's really surprising that you didn't go through a bunch of different trial and errors, because it seemed to always fall back to the way you did it.
I drew up the designs. I sequestered myself. I drew up the designs. I submitted them to Howard. He liked them. I did some color renderings. He liked everything. So that was my template right there. And then I had to figure out how to do it. The first two were fairly easy. The third one was a little bit more involved. And the fourth one, of course, is always the problem.
Can you, not to dwell on the negative, but can you talk about some of those challenges in Puppet 3 and 4 with a little more detail?
The challenge is always, how do you make it last, and how do you make it light and fast? The as soon as you hear the lyrics to Feed Me, you know, it's the kind of eat, the kind of red hot sweet, the kind of sticky licky sweet I crave. You know, that's a lot of syllables right there. So, you know, you want to be able to hit those syllables with that big thing that is, you know, is growing, you know, she's growing in power, she's growing in you know, she's, you know, controlling him more. You know, that what I love about that song is that, you know, Audrey uses every tool at her disposal. You know, fear and cajoling and cuteness and you know, and you know, dangling the girl in front of him, whatever it takes to motivate Seymour. So, you know, so that's a, you know, there's a lot of character, a lot of speed. So so it had to be fast. You know, and then the big girl, you know, it's you know, you don't want to hit that big plant and then all of a sudden, you know, hit the skids and, you know, and be working something slow. So I had to be able to you know, get all that character, all that you know, all the nuances in that big thing as well.
Whilst keeping it light.
Yeah, and you know, the song "Supper Time" is slower than "Feed Me," but you've got, you know, but that's where all the acting meat is, all in the second act in that big girl.
If we can cycle through some more of these drawings, wanted to ask who, in terms of your design aesthetic, who are your specific inspirations? I mean, obviously you have the botany background for this, but was there anything else that you drew from, like the creature features of the 50s or specific artists that you were inspired by when you were coming up with these?
You know, I was such a fan of the original film. You know, I wanted to invoke the original film. And I did not know who did it at the time. I mean, I became friends with Mel Wells in later years, the guy who played the original Mr. Mushnick, and he became a dear friend actually. And I found out that, you know, that they had gotten somebody who did display windows. They paid him, I don't know, $50, $100 to make the plants. It was to put some stuff together. So I did not want to depart from that original film. I considered that, you know, the starting point, and as did Howard. So you know, I never wanted to depart from the basic talking pod thing.
Sure.
Now, in the original one, you know, it talks like this, but you know, as a puppeteer, I wanted it to talk like this, you know, and then come into this mode, into a little bit more anthropomorphic mode from flytrap mode. You know, by that time in my career, I had worked with a lot of different puppeteers, a lot of different, you know, Bill Baird and Nick Coppola and Addis Williams, all, you know, my mentors, and I pulled, you know, the way you do, you pull from everyone you ever work with.
Sure. I want to take a second and encourage those. Seems like we've got quite a few people watching out there on Facebook, and thanks for joining us. Feel free to post questions you may have in the comments so we can ask them live. We're keeping an eye on that, so please throw them out there. We're happy to get the questions that you want asked. As we move forward, I want to talk about your preparation as a performer more so than a fabricator. What did you do? What was your regimen in order to get ready to lift this puppet up and perform this puppet every night during the original run?
Well, my original regimen is this picture up. Can everyone see this? That's the original cast at the WPA Theater before we moved to the Orpheum. That is a happy group of people there. Back then, you know, when I was building the plants, all I did was build the plants. I would stay up for 2 days straight, and then I would sleep for 8 hours, and I would stay up for another 2 days straight. You can see my dear Aunt Carol, Michael Vale, who's to the left of the picture, who played Mr. Mushnick, who was the time to make the donuts guy. Right, peeking behind him, over his right shoulder, is a little face. That's my dear Aunt Carol, who was an artist and sculptor, and she actually helped me build all those plants. It was pretty much just she and I. If I had it to do over again, I would have gotten more help sooner. But my regimen was getting no sleep, eating nothing, surviving on coffee. And then once we started performing it, I just did it. That was it. I got bigger as we went. I see shots of myself after I'd been doing it for a couple of months, and no neck and big arms. When we started working out for the Broadway production, I had a physical regimen there. I still do, I'm not my 28-year-old self there. I'm probably 29, maybe 30 there. But I just got to warm up ahead of time now, and not skip days.
Yeah, can't skip leg day. Wanted to talk about beyond the initial New York run, you find success, you move to the Orpheum, and the production goes global, goes to the international stage. Can you talk about how it was received overseas?
Sure. Is the picture that I'm looking at, is everyone seeing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't, because you can't put Roger Corman up there and not say, God bless you, Roger Corman. That is Roger Corman, who produced the original film and came with his family, and we got him into the plant, and that is one of my favorite pictures ever. What
was his response?
He liked it. He was I'm putting words in his mouth, but I always got the feeling that he thought maybe he let the rights go for a song.
Right, because he didn't copyright it.
Well, I mean, we had Howard got the rights from him, and then Chuck Griffith, who wrote it, said, "Hey, I wrote this original thing." So I think Roger Corman had to share his percentages with Chuck Griffith, which was very kind. Chuck Griffith was a dear man. What was the question?
It was about the taking it globally. Obviously.
Yeah. I mean, after we ran, we opened an Orpheum, and it became a big hit that way. They released it internationally, and it became it just one of the great things about the project, and the international stuff was just part of it, is it was a project where art imitates life, where life imitates art. Sorry, got that backwards. Where the play Little Shop of Horrors actually took over the world, which was very cool. I mean, she kind of devoured the world in her own way. It was the #1 stock and amateur production for years. God, still maybe I get the readouts, and they're thick. It's always being produced internationally someplace. I always love the poster that's up now. La Petite Boutique des Horreurs. It just tickles me so. I have a collection. There was a time when I had a collection of all the international posters, dozens of them, and it's just one wonderful thing after another to see how she has taken over the world.
I know your shooting schedule prevented you from going for the London production, but were you able to do any of the international performances or productions?
No, I never performed it internationally. I've consulted. There was a time rather early on when I decided I did not want to spend my life making plants. I made, I did the original production, and then we upgraded the production when we went to the Orpheum. We improved some things and refurbished a lot of things, and then we hired a shop to build the next set for Los Angeles, which I did perform for a while, and then there was a company in England that produced the plants there. God, I think they did, or did we send those over? I don't recall now. There was a shop that I worked with and consulted with, and actually did a lot of building with early on, that was doing a lot of the plant building. I think they ended up building about 10 sets of plants for international productions. So they were sending them out there. The picture that's up now, that's from Japan. My friend Shinichi Wakasa built those, and he came to see the show, and I met with him, and we got on fine. And in later years, I went to Tokyo and stayed with he and his family, and he and his family would come and stay with me at my house. And his family kept growing. He's got like five kids now. He's still a good friend.
I wanted to see, like, before we move on to the Broadway quote unquote revival, if you could go back and advise yourself at the very, very beginning, either technically as a performer, financially, however, and you can give yourself you get 2 minutes to give yourself advice, what would you tell yourself?
I would have said get help early on. Bring in everybody you know, so that you're not building the whole darn thing yourself. I would have consulted with somebody who knew a lot more than I did about everything, but mostly to zero out the weight, something that would have helped to lift it. As it was, I just did kind of brute strength, but it was not the smart way to go. If I had a couple minutes, I would get some professional help.
That's great advice for anyone.
Yeah, I could use that. I could use that advice right now.
We've got a couple of questions coming in from Facebook. Okay. From Aaron B. Smith, does anyone know who the original film puppeteer was? Knowing Corman, it could have been him or a stranger off the street.
No, it was Chuck Griffith. Griffith did the voice. This is the script writer. So he was under the table flapping the thing, the way Mel Wells tells it. The original cast came to the production in Los Angeles, and Mel Wells and I struck up a friendship, and I built some stuff for him in later years, and we kept in good contact. So I got all the great stories. But the original, that's Chuck Griffith. And as far as I know, he's working it too.
Great. I got one. We've got a couple more. I want to get one more in, and then we'll get back to the prepared portion. From Jennifer Bain, if you were the viewers with a passion for the world of puppetry, how would you go about asking for a moment of guidance from a knowledgeable, experienced puppeteer such as yourself?
Can you distill that question?
It seems like they're looking for assistance getting started. My gut instinct would be to look into the O'Neill Puppetry Conference.
Oh, God.
As an opportunity to meet and really exchange ideas. But how would you?
So the question is, how do you where do you go for good basic knowledge? For
good guidance from a knowledgeable, experienced puppeteer such as yourself.
Oh God, go to if you want to go to. If you're interested in university setting at all, go to UConn. Go to Bart Wackerburton's program at UConn. For God's sake, get yourself there. It's the it's the best program. There's a good program at Sarah Lawrence. They've got some stuff out at Cal Arts, I believe. And other places. But if you want the puppetry program, you go to Storrs, Connecticut, and you talk to Bart Wackerburton.
Thank you. If you could say that again in our like nice and clear for the digital display for the commercial, we'd really appreciate that.
You know, and it's not because he's a friend, and it's not because, you know, I've been there and consulted, and it's not. It's because it's true. You know, I'm sorry. It's just you know, you will learn everything you need to learn about basic puppetry there. You know, don't go there if you are just you know, a Muppet geek and want Muppet stuff, because, you know, they'll touch on that, but it's puppetry, the art of puppetry, and you will get all styles there. And you know,
so the art. I'm sorry to cut you off, Marty, but like the art's getting ahead of us, and I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I want to give you a chance to talk about the revival, because these sketches that we're seeing, I believe, are from the most recent version you were associated with. I was wondering if you could talk about what changes you made for the Broadway revival, and how was that experience for you?
It was a terrific experience, and it was also a soul-shattering experience. You know, it went through two very, very different lives going to Broadway. We had an original director and we went out of town, and there was a vision with that, and it was you know, and it was coming together, and everyone believed in it, and then they pulled the plug and changed directors and got rid of most of the cast. They kept me, and they kept the plants because I think they had to. I think they had too much invested in the plants at the time. So there was two different visions from two different directors for the plant. What you're seeing in these drawings these are all my drawings. These are what I wanted to do was to invoke the first one, do a bunch of stuff that I hadn't done, bring all, you know, any knowledge that I had to bear, and I brought in experts, which was great, and people who were brilliant at building things and designing things. The designer Andrew Benepe helped out like mad with you know, I owe him and other collaborators on that project a huge debt of gratitude on this. This thing, I modeled the photo that's up it's a clay model, which we then cast in plaster, refined, did a digital scan, and cut it out of foam, styrofoam, and then cast fiberglass over it. Actually, not fiberglass. It was a vacuum bag resin fiber, a carbon fiber. So it was super light, super strong. That was the big plant, and she was so, you know, maybe 8 to 10 feet from base to tip there. So they scanned that model, just bumped it up, and the big pod was just as light and as strong as can be.
Just for comparison's sake, and if this is proprietary information, I understand. What was the budget for this set of Audrey plants, as opposed to the $375 paycheck and the $2,000 budget for the first one?
It was it was $2,000 for the first one. It was $850,000 for the second one.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
A little bit of a scale up, just a little bit.
A little, and you know, and you know, we you know, there's a little R&D. We went down some blind alleys with that. There were some things that we did that I mean, for instance, you know, the number 2 plant with the fake hand, we put a mechanic inside, a mechanical little cam thing that allowed the fingers to actually twiddle their fingers on the edge of the top. Beautiful piece of machinery that ultimately didn't mean a thing. It was just me having a good time, and we ended up just cutting that, and some other things as well. I had some some brilliant builders working on some interesting things that were ultimately blind alley.
Actually, you had mentioned this image earlier, and this goes to a question we have on Facebook from Noel Williams. Is it true that one version of the Broadway show had the final Audrey II come out over the audience in the finale? If you can talk a little bit about this mechanic that we're seeing and answer that question at the same time.
Yeah, the mechanic you're seeing is the first shot CAD drawing of how we wanted to lift the puppeteer and work the the whole, how the whole thing was going to work with this counterbalance system. The system you see there is based on it's called a tech crane, which extends out, and as the boom extends out, there's a weight that counterbalances in the back that keeps it in perfect equilibrium all the time. And that's ultimately what we did. There's a piece of artwork that I did that'll come up a little later that shows that a little bit better. There's also a schematic of the side that shows kind of how that boom operated.
If we move forward in this, I think
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same CAD schematic with my drawing over it, kind of showing how it came together.
And how much did this one weigh?
This one weighed a ton and a quarter.
So was
that's
that
the
you?
Whole thing. That's the whole thing. That's the whole lifting, and it drove forward. The schematic that comes up later that shows the actual what the actual mechanics actually looked like will give you a better idea of what this one is just interior of the plant. That one, yeah, that's actually drawn. I drew that backstage from the lifting mechanism. That's the monster mechanics that we actually ended up building, which was about a ton and a quarter. We had tracks underneath the stage, so it drove forward. That whole thing counterbalanced. You can see the weights on the top, which would pull back. It extended out about 12 feet, but it drove forward in the stage. She went about 20 feet from side to side almost. Which you could almost hit the side of the stage at the Virginia Theater. It's now the August Wilson Theater, and we could drive as Noel Williams. Hello, Noel. How are you? We could drive over the fifth row of the audience, and we actually had to put a governor in the system, which broke my heart. But it had to keep us from taking the heads off of the people in the fifth row. They would keep us from going too low. But
it broke your heart to put a governor on it?
Yeah, because you want it to be a visceral experience, right?
Doesn't get more visceral than decapitation.
Right. Back at the Orpheum Theater, we had when we were first kind of testing the thing out, we would go out and check the seats, and we would count how many wet seats there were. Oh, 5 wet seats. It's a good house.
I have no segue from wet seat humor. What are we looking at right here?
What you're looking at here is a wonderful idea. It was not my idea. This is one of those things I wish was my idea. It's what it is there. These are overlay drawings. You can kind of see where the human being is inside these, but these are claws. I mean, as she grows and comes, gains in power. She's got these claw/hands, the things that grab Audrey, put her in her mouth, that give her more agency in the world. And that is a costume with a person inside. Go to the next one with the color one. That's the one. That is a costume. On your left is the right leg. The left leg is forward. And the 2 other appendages are arms, and the head is associated with one of the fingers, and you're seeing out one of the knuckles. And it was creepy in the extreme because it was kind of hard to figure out what, what was going on with that, why it was so creepy and crawly, and because you'd never put a human being inside something like that.
Of course. How big was the team for the Broadway revival?
We had 4 puppeteers and 2 flymen.
Anyone you want to name check?
Yeah, God, Anthony Asbury, one of those brilliant puppeteers in the world. Bill Hubner, and Matt Vogel, another brilliant puppeteer. Matt Vogel, who is now Big Bird and Kermit the Frog.
Corner in the industry.
Yeah. So that was my crew, and we would rotate. You do light duty, medium duty, heavy duty, day off. So we were, how every character, every performer has an understudy. We got a special dispensation from Actors Equity that we knew we couldn't have an understudy just sitting there waiting to go on. So we rotated the understudy in every 4th performance, so that we all acted as the understudy. And when it was your time to rotate out after doing the big girl and destroying yourself, you watched the show from the audience and gave the other 3 notes on their performance, because we didn't have a monitor feedback system. The other 2 were the flymen, the guys who were working the end of that boom that you saw that would actually, by their physical strength, although remember it was all counterbalance. It weighed 1.25 tons, but it was all weightless. It was all perfectly counterbalanced, but you still had to move the base of that teeter-totter around. And that was Jeff and Mike. Joe, I'm blanking on their name.
I'm sure everybody will know who they are. Jeff and Mike.
But our life was in their hands nightly. So these were our buddies.
Nice. We've got a Facebook question for you. You ready?
Yep.
From Mackenzie Doss. Do you feel that modern puppeteers need to be sorts of jacks of all trades, or is it possible to specialize in a particular aspect of puppetry and fabrication?
I think one of the fun things about puppeteering is doing it all. I mean, why? If you're interested in puppetry, why would you limit yourself to one style? That being said, I mostly make my living doing this, but I love all aspects of puppetry. And whenever you're faced with a project, it's like, all right, how best to solve the challenges of this project? What is it? What's required of? And if you're going to go puppetry, why puppets? I mean, that is the question. Is you don't just because you're a puppeteer and because you know puppetry, that doesn't mean that puppetry is always the answer. Humans do humans really well. I mean, if you're gonna be a human on stage, don't try to recreate it with a puppet. Don't try to, if you want an animal, get an animal, train an animal. But if you're dealing, in the symbolic range and, in something that could never be done by a human, bring puppetry to bear and bring all the wonderful aspects of puppetry to bear. And if you could do it with a shadow, do it with a shadow. Why build a 1.25 tons of carnivorous plant if you can do it with a shadow? Do it with a suggestion. I may have overbuilt this thing.
I mean, if you've got an $850,000 budget and you come out with shadows, you might get some pushback.
You might get pushback. Yes.
There was a version that Rob and I saw actually done in Providence recently, and they did the Orin being eaten scene, but with a shadow. It was the actual puppet, but there was a screen in front of it, and so you didn't see the parts going in, and that made the splatter effect of water splattering on it, and it made it much more gory. But I really enjoyed it because it was like you're not actually seeing it, but it's making your imagination actually really work well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another question from Facebook, and then I'm going to give you a bit of a break, Marty, to talk with Will about the unfortunately scuttled production of CRT. The question from Facebook, from Michael Parmalee, I'm a horror fanatic. What do you consider some of the best puppetry creations and execution in horror films? It's okay if the film overall wasn't great.
Oh, puppetry in horror films. Jeez. I don't know. I'd have to think on that.
I'll let you think on that while I talk to Will about his design. Is that all right?
Sure, sure.
All right. So pivoting to what has recently befallen us, I was scheduled to be the dramaturg, the puppet coach, and the puppeteer inside of plants designed and built by William Smith. Hi, Will. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great.
Good. You want to talk us through? We've got about 5 minutes before we've got to shift to the next section.
Thanks,
So
Marty.
If you want to talk through your process, and don't worry, we got a little more time than that.
Okay. Yeah. So that was just one of the research pictures I was looking at. So when I was first thinking about this, I wanted to do something different than what Marty had done. And one of my first ideas was to have multiple layers, like that previous picture you saw, with multiple different jaws. And I had thought about making what I call the tripod, where the mouth split into 3 parts instead of just 2. And I went to the O'Neill last summer, and thank goodness Marty was there. And I talked to him about it, and coincidentally, he had also thought of the tripod already. And so that was like my little sign that that I was going to go that route. So that was my Puppet 2. I don't even have a drawing for Puppet 1, but you can keep going. And basically the way I was going to do it was that during the first and second and third puppet, it was going to act like the traditional puppet where the 2 jaws stayed the same, like the 2 top jaws stayed together and only the bottom moved, so that by the end, okay, John, next one, please. So by next one more, that's puppet 4. So by the end, it would do a big reveal moment where the top would split up into 3, or the top jaw would split into 2, making 3 jaws at the very end when I ate Audrey and Mushnick, but we were still, I don't know if that was actually officially decided by our director whether Mushnick was going to get eaten that way. What's the next photo, John?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so there's a little model that I did.
So I know you met with David Regan early on in the process.
Yeah.
And one of the questions that you and I both got to ask him is what he felt he needed more time for. Can you talk about a little bit about how that response shaped your process?
Yeah, so at the very beginning, also before I went with the tripod, I was thinking about doing a pitcher plant style. And David Regan has done an excellent pitcher plant interpretation of Audrey II. And so I got to meet with him, and his first advice was to work as much as you possibly can early on the vines, because he felt like he didn't get enough time to work with the vines. They didn't do enough. They just kind of were there, and they were just decoration. And luckily, when I talked to him, we hadn't even spoken to the director yet. So all this was just me working on my own. And so yeah, we weren't even really sure about what the director wanted as for the headwise. So I got to work on the vines early on.
Great. Can we take a look at some of the images from the vines?
Yeah. So
that's what we're looking at here.
Yeah. So the vines were just layers of foam in strips that went down with cable going through them all. And then this wheel right here, as you pull the wheel, one cord would get pulled, and then if you release the wheel, the cable would get pulled. So basically all you have to do is pull this one lever back and forth, and the vine will swing right and left. So I did 4 of those, and then this one was the same method where you pull the lever and the vine will swing right and left, but then you step on the foot pedal and the whole thing raises up and down. So basically you can get up and down motion and right and left motion. And that was going to be the one vine that like actually got to grab people, and like it could come up and then wrap around the actors and pull them in. next slide there, John. Yeah, so that was basically the layout. The pod would sit in the middle, and then all of the vines, there were 5 10-foot long vines that would stretch out all over.
Okay, great. And let's talk me through these next couple images.
Yeah, so that was Puppet 2. Actually, I went a lot bigger than I think I should have. But that was the final product of Puppet 2, and again, it was the same as Marty, where it was just a hand puppet. But and then if you keep going there, John, that was Puppet 1, and Puppet 1 again was a little bit bigger than what I was expecting as I started to make it, so I had to custom make that coffee can. In our interpretation, oh, you go ahead.
You had a specific reason for going larger, given the location of where we were performing.
Yeah, you go ahead with that.
No. You're the designer. Well, I'm just the host.
In our version, I was going big as possible because the proscenium theater that we were in was everything was pushed back really far, and everything was going to look small. And so I needed to make Audrey II as big as possible to take up as much room in that stage as possible with our budget, though, which was definitely not Broadway's budget, but it was decent. And so everything scaled up. So like the Audrey II Tech 4, what I called her, the big girl, she was about 20, I think, with the full extension of leaves and she was 20 feet wide, but the head was only 5 or 6 feet wide.
Sure. As the images are getting a little ahead of us, and I wanted to let you two compare notes on your drawings for a trifold. So I'll shut up and let you talk.
I actually, can you go one more, John? Yeah, I actually haven't seen this picture until today, and this is Marty's version of the tripod, which it's fantastic. It makes me smile just looking at it because that's exactly what I was doing, and I love it. It's brilliant. Did yours have the top part open up? It looks like the bottom 2 stayed together and the top 1 came up. Or did all 3?
What I was wishing for, and if I had to do, if anyone asked me to do it again, I would try to get all 3 lobes working independently.
Okay.
So this one, these 2, these 2, or these 2 in any combination to really be able to kind of form words, to just do a little lippy part if it's just the bottom one. Open all of them if it when she really wanted to make a point. I think instead of lips forming words the way they did so beautifully in Frank Oz's film, I think it might be nice to have articulation more in the plant kingdom rather than the animal.
When I was doing it, I wanted the split of the 3 to be a surprise. So throughout the whole 3/4 of the show, it looks like it's just 2 leaves folded over, and then it splits open as a surprise. But I like being able to move all 3 at once. That I don't think mechanically I would have been able to figure out how to do, though.
I don't know. Again, how I do it, but that's what I'd go for. And then maybe that's part of the way she evolves. Is starts out with 1, and then works the split later when she's a big girl.
Yeah.
I want to pivot back to Marty a little bit. Will, thank you for all that. You mentioned Frank Oz's wonderful adaptation. Were you able to advise on that at all, or did you at least make an appearance on set?
I was on the set a lot. There were two incarnations of that film. Originally, it was going to be directed by John Landis, and I did a proposal to John Landis, and and he accepted it and said, you know, can you build the plans for $1 million? And I said, yeah, sure. And he hired Ellen Green, who was my girlfriend at the time. So we were going to go down to Churubusco Studios in Mexico and shoot it down there for $35 million or something like that. And then John Landis had his you know, his sad legal trouble with that film he worked on, and gave up the production. And the way I heard it, called his good friend Frank Oz. And from then it escalated into a much bigger production. He was going to do it in England. It was out of my range by then. It was I had a simpler plan for it. What Lyle Conway did with that was just astounding. It was as Lyle Conway. I just love it when he said that the puppet in that show was the last great rubber monster, just before CG. And, the only special effect that they did on that was slowing down the footage so that the image speeded up a little bit. Film is usually 24 frames a second. I think they shot some of the big plant, and some get it at 16 frames, and which meant that all the actors around them had to act slowly. But I was there for a lot of that production, mostly on Ellen Green's support.
I had a question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Joe.
I had a question to jump in. I was thinking for Marty and for Will, looking at all of these amazing images of a plant puppet, you realize that so many puppets are representing humans or maybe animals, and kind of thinking about the tripod structure that you were just talking about earlier. Are there differences in creating puppet character for a plant, rather than a human? I think in terms of structure and what it looks like. And of course, both of you have experience with puppets of animals or humans. What's the difference there? Are there challenges that you don't find in other types of puppets?
What do you think, Will?
I don't know. Whenever I was designing it and coming up with different renditions, I kept thinking biologically what made sense. So every time I thought about a new way of doing it, I thought, well, why would that species evolve that way or change to do that way? There was one interpretation where I wanted to have the mouth open and then a separate pair of clamping jaws on the inside. Obviously, this was back at the very beginning when I was just letting my imagination go wild. But I don't know. I think you always have to have your foot in the realism and how that would not only how that would be done, but how it would make sense biologically, like how it would work. But I guess with puppetry, that's the beautiful thing. Anything's possible.
Yeah, and when in the plant world, plants are so beautiful and economic and simple and elegant. God, they're just some of the most elegant things, and and they're kind of symbolic too. I think of a plant as much more symbolic than humans. I mean, we get so involved with we are humans, and we're just covered in humanity all the time, and all of our point of references with entertainment are all human. It's really nice to go into this highly stylized range, into the a little bit more little metaphysical.
Yeah. Got a couple more questions from Facebook. One that I can actually answer. Will the UConn performance be scuttled, or could it come back once the pandemic has passed us by? I'll go to you, Marty, first. What do you think? Kidding.
Absolutely.
Here's hoping. Unfortunately, it looks like it is off the table due to rights issues and such. But I'm sure at some point that Little Shop, much like the world, goes round and round and round.
Right.
So I'm sure at some point. I'm sorry?
You say rights issues?
Yeah.
Well, in terms of the season has already been selected for next season. So trying to find a slot for it wasn't going to work out. That said, sorry, go ahead, John.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but I was going to say, aren't the puppets you guys fabricated might they have a second life as objects puppets that could be rented for other shows?
Well, right now 1 and 2 are done, and 3 is dang near done. I just have to put a little bit of skin on the bottom part of the last one. But Puppet 4 is right now just the aluminum frame of the bottom jaw. So UConn is still building their puppets. I'm not sure. It hasn't been 100% officially decided whether or not we're renting out yet or not.
Tell them they have to do the production. You know, maybe not next season, but the season after that, for goodness sake.
Well, at that point, Will and I will be out on the market looking for jobs. So
so they can hire you to do it.
That's true.
No more free labor.
Yes, you're right. We do have another question from Facebook. As a mech novice, would a 3-split mech jaw be able to be operated by one person, or would it have to have 2 conceptually? From Mackenzie Doss again.
But no, I think I'd want to work it all myself. You know, an arm
just
in one, and and a leg in the other.
It would be a workout, but it could be done with just one.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm doing too. both just like figuring it out.
Yeah. You know, maybe. Yeah, there's ways. You know, maybe the bottom ones would be mechanical. You know, on the big girl, the bottom one opened when I lifted the top one because of where the cantilever was, where the joint was, and where I was lifting it from. So, and I could lift it, I could let it drop. I had, but yeah, it's. I mean, being a puppeteer is being an inventor, being a problem solver. You know, coming up with the answers that you need to tell the story, and if that's what's required, you know, that's what we do.
Just curious, just because it's something we talked about in prepping for this. Thoughts on other incarnations of Little Shop that you weren't directly involved in, such as the recent production out in California and the Off-Broadway with Jonathan Groff. Any thoughts on those?
Today, you guys very kindly gave me the link to the one in Pasadena, I believe. It's beautiful. Really, I read the designer's logic for what he did. It's just a thing of beauty. The plant is much more of a flower. It's got 5 lobes, for goodness sakes. I didn't see. I saw a video of the smaller one. I would love to have seen video of the bigger one to see how those 5 lobes, you know, come down on Audrey, the girl, and you know, and deliver the death blow, and how it eats Mushnik and Seymour and all that stuff. But gorgeous design, and I just love it when people come up with something different, better than mine. The production that I saw in with Jonathan Groff, it was with plants by the Monkey Boys, dear friends of mine, who make beautiful plants. The audience went nuts. The plant was great. It was probably the best version of a Get It that I've ever seen anywhere. It was just a thing of beauty. The nuance was tight and fun and funny, and it was, and I just love the theater that it's in. It was just a perfect theater, small, intimate. It was, it invoked the Orpheum, where the plant was, you know, when it approached the edge of the stage, was really, you know, really was fearsome.
Yeah. We got a couple more questions. I want to put a last call out as we're in our last 15 minutes. If you've got the questions, send them in now, and we will try to get them in. Katie Williams asks, is there a way to see the Puppets production from Pasadena? The LA Times did a lovely feature article with some great color photos of the puppets. Michael Parmalee asks, is there a dream puppet you've planned out but haven't been able to make as of yet? It's not directed to anyone, so I'll direct it to you both.
Dream puppet? The trilobe Audrey is a dream puppet.
Well, you can come over anytime and help me finish it. Come on. Puppet 4 still needs work. Come on over.
Great. Let's do it.
Yeah. That's my dream puppet. Working with Marty on Puppet. On
Oh,
Puppet 4.
wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
And doing that with everything that I learned in the Broadway production about bungees and pulleys and counterbalances and lifting. I would love to come up with a system where one person could do a lot of the lifting that was done by that like that massive teeter tot that we use in Broadway. Something like that. I actually have the original big girl out in my little storage barn, and it's just covered. She's mice have been living in there for years. It's just 20 years worth of mouse defecation in there. So, but I can't bear. But I could strip it and take it down to its fiberglass shell, and I would really love to experiment with some kind of lifting mechanism that would really give you all that sinuous movement and none of the weight. I might do that.
One more question coming in from Facebook from Noel Williams.
Hey, Noel.
Tied for the lead in questions with Mackenzie Doss. Will, did you design Puppet 4 for Rob's height to operate? Marty, are your puppets designed for someone your height?
Yeah, I knew going into the design process right away that Rob was going to be the one operating. So everything I did, I took Rob's size into account. Like Puppet 1 and 2, I had him measure out his hand for the mouth plates. And yeah, Puppet 4, the big final one, we were using levers behind. So like the front of the puppet, the mouth of the puppet was here, and then Rob was would be standing a good, can't remember, was it like 5 feet back or 4?
It was like 4 and a half. 3.
Yeah, and then he's manipulating it from behind, and yeah, it was great to know who I was exactly building it for, because I could know, okay, it has to be this tall.
I only make puppets that for me to perform. And
how tall are you exactly?
I was just gonna say you're the average height, so it's okay.
And I only hire puppeteers to work with me that are my exact height.
Oh, well. Yep. There you go.
I'm 6'2". Back in the days when Jim and Frank were hiring new puppeteers, they only hired puppeteers who were as tall as they were, so that they wouldn't, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Very limiting.
Wanted to do a quick shout out for those with questions on the CRT production. One of the other designers, the scenic designer, KP, has a site going where she's documenting all of the designer's work, in particular hers as the scenic designer, and that's KPEZ space designs. You can find it on Facebook and on Instagram. She did an interview with us where we get to go into about an hour's worth of detail on how we found our process and how we did that. So if anyone's got questions about what it was going to look like from a costuming perspective, from a sound perspective, from a scenic perspective, or puppetry perspective, you can go to the KPEZ designs and check the audio there, and she's constantly posting new information there. We've got another question from Facebook. Karen Berman, high school productions that rent the puppets, do they have bungees and mechanisms in them?
It's a pig and a poke. You never know what you're getting. Some of the plants available for rental out there are really pretty good, and some are profoundly horrible.
I was
dangerously horrible.
Yeah,
I've been in some that I said, here's my advice. Stay as far away from this plant as you can. It's going to kill you.
Mhm.
Ones that, that have no sense of balance, that are just, that can't be lifted by, it doesn't matter how strong you are. So you'd never know. Some people build things that are terrific and light and work well and they're good characters.
I've seen some that are just like two mattresses smacking together, and that poor puppeteer inside is just getting a workout, throwing out their back.
Yeah.
Is that because are those designed by people who don't have a background in making puppets and therefore don't quite understand the demands of puppetry that Marty, for example, you were talking about earlier in terms of balance and also the way you described the sinuous movement of puppets. I think sometimes puppetry is considered to be something, I could do that. I have experience building,
right.
I don't know, some other aspects of theater, but I wonder if that's part of the challenge with what we're talking about.
You're exactly right, John. It's people think that if they can build a prop, they can build a puppet, or if they can build a brick wall, they can build a puppet. It's not that easy.
They're probably they think about just the fact that it has to open and close its mouth because it's got to eat somebody, but they don't think about every syllable going up and down and the movement of the entire head, getting as much personality out of the puppet as possible. They're just probably just thinking, okay, it's got to open and close.
And I've seen puppet builders who build a puppet, say, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that works, but now work it for an hour and a half. Night after night.
We have a follow-up question on your hiring principles. How tall are you?
How tall am I? Well, I don't follow those principles anymore. I'm 6'2", but I spend most of my career performing like flat on my back. So flat on my back, I'm the distance between from here to here. We get low on Sesame Street. We have little low gliders, we call them, that are just inches from the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Pull ourselves along on. Sometimes we are literally just flat on our back. So height is irrelevant. In Snuffy, it's not irrelevant. The backpack sits at a certain place on my hips and my so I get a certain amount of height and loft from Snuffy needs to be a big boy, and I bring that to bear when I climb inside that beast.
Follow up on that, just as we're winding down on time. I know Sesame Street has some new content coming out. Could you tell us and our audience a little bit about that?
Well, the new content is just before things shut down. They sent us all our puppets and some tripods and some microphones and some plugs to plug our iPhones into TVs, and we're producing material from home. Telemonster is producing a little series from underneath his bed sheets, which is from his little fort. We did last week. They aired Elmo's virtual play date with Anne Hathaway and Lin-Manuel Miranda. Just of course, like we're doing it now on hundreds of miles apart on computer, but staying close, staying tight as we can.
We got one more Facebook question before I turn it back over to John to wrap up. From Maggie Flanagan, would you recommend working with a physical ergonomics specialist when developing these more intense and potentially dangerous puppets?
A specific ergonomic specialist? Yeah, that sounds good. That's something that a puppet designer, puppet builder needs to be. How does the human body work? I mean, the way I understand ergonomics, how does it work best? How does it work most efficiently? How does it interface with your, between your mind and your body, your hand, your appendages, in the most facile, useful way? Yeah, I would love to see if a person like that who really understands that could bring that stuff to bear. I mean, I have, I know how my body works, so I build things to the way a human body works. But I don't understand the mathematics or mechanics of it.
Well, I want to turn it back over to John for any closing announcements from the Ballard. I know we've got some exciting events coming up. Marty, Will, thank you so much. This is a great discussion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Rob, for pulling this all together and bringing out all sorts of fascinating information about Marty's work and Will's work, and I mean your own work as a dramaturg for Little Shop. I think informs all of this. It's really, I'm excited that you all could be part of this first online puppet forum. As Rob suggested, we're doing more such events in the weeks and months, I guess, to come until we can do such things live. But tomorrow at 2 o'clock, there's a puppet making workshop on our Ballard Institute Facebook Live feed. And next week on Friday, the 29th, or excuse me, not that Friday, on Wednesday, April 29th, the Nico Tiana Talkback International Balinese-US collaboration. That's going to be interesting.
Who's running the puppet making workshop?
You would ask me. Tomorrow. I'm not sure who it is tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Tracy Becker.
Tracy Becker is.
An animation workshop, stop motion animation workshop. And I think that's going to be super interesting. All of these workshops are being created by puppet arts students, and they're all quite good. It's everybody's really good working with a camera and doing really challenging and exciting work. So yeah, Tracy Becker.
I want to send out special thanks to Emily Wicks and Tracy Becker as well, who are currently on our Zoom call, but you can't see them out there on Facebook. They're doing the hard work of prompting things and keeping us on pace. Anything else, John?
Well, I look forward to Will and Rob being with us again at the Puppet Arts Program in the coming academic year, and I think your work is going to propel you into all sorts of wonderful things after that. For Marty, I'm glad we got to see how sort of inspiring and insightful you are talking about puppets. I know you teach at the O'Neill. At the Neo Puppetry Conference, and you can see why people really love to work with you. And best wishes with all of your projects at home or in other places as well. So thank you, Emily and Tracy, as Rob said. And I think that's it. We're done. I think we didn't actually make a cue for how to stop this, Emily. But
You ever practiced our
stop
curtain
it
call?
on Facebook Live. So thank you everybody for